You want to know what Farage and Reform are doing on their rare visits to Parliament? They're voting against our Employment Rights Bill. They talk the language of workers' rights online and on the doorstep, but they voted against banning fire and rehire. They voted against scrapping exploitative zero-hour contracts. They voted against sick leave and maternity pay. And what about the NHS? They want to charge people to use our NHS. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain. And they are not the answer for Scotland.
Keir Starmer is deploying every tactic at his disposal to undermine Nigel Farage and Reform UK. And the reason is clear. He cannot tolerate the challenge they represent. Farage has been openly questioning Starmer's escalating commitment to the war in Ukraine, a policy that risks entangling Britain further in conflicts it need not enter. This scrutiny disrupts Starmer's broader political narrative, making Farage a genuine threat to his authority. But before Farage could even respond, the tables turned and Starmer was caught off guard. Katie Hopkins, known for her unfiltered criticism, delivered a blistering assessment of his leadership. In a recent interview, she systematically dismantled Starmer's public image, exposing the fragility behind his polished rhetoric. Hopkins didn't merely criticise, she delivered a takedown. Her remarks laid bare the contradiction between Starmer's controlled persona and the insecurity driving his attempts to silence dissent.
Trump, in his first 100 days in office, will have ended the war, which was his campaign pledge, and he will have honoured that pledge. But the interesting thing, of course, is that success has many fathers. So what you're going to see is Keir Starmer and Macron and a number of other weaklings from Europe trying to claim that they helped bring about peace in Ukraine, that they played a part in bringing about peace. And of course, that cannot be true, because if it were true, they would have sorted it before. If it were true, they could have done something about it during the Biden.
So, what exactly did Katie Hopkins say about Keir Starmer, and what is he really trying to achieve? Let's examine the full picture. Starmer's latest public embarrassment has evolved into a political fiasco, one that exposes both his growing desperation and the widening fractures within his foreign and domestic agenda. This entire episode began when Starmer, clearly unsettled by Nigel Farage's surge in public support, attempted to brand him as an irresponsible populist who stands against legislation aimed at helping working families. But anyone following British politics closely can see through that narrative. Starmer's fixation on Farage has little to do with policy disagreements at home and everything to do with Ukraine. The animosity Starmer directs toward Farage goes far beyond ordinary political rivalry. It reflects a deep insecurity about his own foreign policy stance. While Starmer echoes the prevailing establishment line on Ukraine without question, Farage has done what few others dare. He's challenged the narrative. He's raised uncomfortable questions about Britain's deepening involvement, about the financial interests driving that commitment, and about the lack of transparency surrounding the government's true objectives.
It may be a great irony that a Remainer Prime Minister used Brexit freedoms as effectively as he did yesterday. Indeed, as Number 10 briefed, we are now in a unique position compared to the rest of Europe, and yesterday was a triumph. I also applaud him making such positive words about President Trump and our relationship with America, even if nobody behind him agrees. But here's the key. President Zelensky has now accepted that he's going to sign the minerals agreement with America. And America's going to put in $100 billion or whatever it is, and thousands of Americans will be in Ukraine. Is that of itself enough of a security guarantee? No. Or does it mean that we need to send British troops? And if we do, given the size of our army, how many?
By challenging the official line, Nigel Farage has dismantled one of Keir Starmer's core arguments, the idea that Britain must escalate its military involvement to achieve peace. That narrative, already fragile, is beginning to collapse under scrutiny. As the political ground shifts beneath him, Starmer appears increasingly uneasy, his controlled composure giving way to visible frustration and, at times, outright panic. Rather than confronting Farage's direct and legitimate questions, Starmer resorted to evasion. When pressed on whether sending British troops to Ukraine is truly necessary, he sidestepped the issue entirely, deflecting into abstract discussions about who bears responsibility for aggression. It was a calculated move, an attempt to obscure the central question rather than answer it, and it revealed a leader more concerned with managing perception than with offering clarity or conviction.
The mineral deal is not enough on its own, but can I just remind him, Russia is the aggressor. Zelensky is a war leader whose country has been invaded. And we should all be supporting him and not fawning over Putin.
Farage's exchange with Keir Starmer was more than a heated political debate. It was a systematic takedown of Starmer's entire Ukraine strategy. His question cut directly to the core of the issue. Why is Britain preparing to send troops to Ukraine when the United States has already secured its influence there through economic means, not military force? This wasn't grandstanding. It was a precise and devastating exposure of policy incoherence. Washington has safeguarded its interests through commerce and contracts, not combat. In a recent agreement, the US secured a $100 billion mineral deal with Ukraine, a move that embedded American corporations and thousands of US jobs within the country's infrastructure. It's a masterclass in strategic deterrence, economic presence used as protection, creating a deterrent far stronger than troop deployments. Putin may posture against NATO, but he won't risk a direct clash with the US by targeting American assets on Ukrainian soil. That single fact undermines Starmer's entire justification for escalating Britain's military involvement, if Ukraine's stability is already underpinned by US. Economic entrenchment. What purpose does it serve for Britain, with its shrinking recruitment numbers, overstretched forces, and declining defence budget to wade deeper into a conflict it can neither control nor afford? Farage's questioning didn't just reveal flaws, it dismantled the facade completely. If America itself believes that economic leverage, not boots on the ground, is the key to deterrence, then Starmer's fixation on military escalation becomes indefensible. And when confronted with that reality, Starmer had no substantive response. Cornered and visibly unsettled, he reached for the familiar tools of political evasion smears, deflections, and empty rhetoric. It was the performance of a leader exposed, relying on distraction because he could not withstand the weight of the argument.
Nigel Farage is fawning over Putin. That's not patriotism.
In July, Reform UK fought the election on a policy to increase defence spending to 2.5% GDP by 2027. Are you Nigel Farage in disguise?
Nigel Farage didn't even turn up to the debate in Parliament today. Nigel Farage is fawning over Putin. That's not patriotism. That is not what working people need. What I've done is take the duty of Prime Minister seriously, which is to ensure that our citizens are safe and secure, and this decision is made to ensure that they are safe and secure.
Instead of addressing the legitimate concerns raised by Farage, Starmer resorted to a calculated diversion. He wrapped the entire debate in a cloak of moral grandstanding, reducing a complex issue to a false binary. In Starmer's framing, you either back the deployment of British troops to Ukraine or you're capitulating to Putin. You either support escalation or you're betraying Ukraine. This isn't leadership, it's manipulation, a deliberate attempt to transform legitimate scrutiny into moral heresy. Such framing is not just misleading, it's dangerous. It replaces reasoned debate with moral intimidation, coercing silence through guilt rather than conviction. Questioning reckless escalation is not the same as supporting Russia, and Starmer knows that. But by erasing this nuance, he weaponizes moral absolutism to suppress dissent. The objective isn't to engage in a genuine policy debate, it's to delegitimize anyone who dares challenge the prevailing establishment line. In doing so, Starmer reveals a deeper truth, his reliance on the same tired, pro-war narrative that has dominated Westminster for decades. When stripped of moral posturing, his response exposes not strength, but insecurity, a leader unwilling to defend policy on principle, falling back instead on fear and false virtue.
We see clearly before us the test of our times, a crossroads in our history. I announced a deal that perfectly symbolises the new era. A partnership with Ukraine that allows them to use £1.6 billion of UK export finance to buy 5,000 air defence missiles manufactured in Belfast. Mr. Speaker, that means UK jobs, UK skills, UK finance pulling together for our national interests, putting Ukraine in the strongest possible position for peace and protecting innocent civilians from the terror of Russian drones.
Farage's challenge cut deeper than any routine exchange. It stripped away the political facade and exposed an uncomfortable truth. Starmer's Ukraine policy has little to do with defending democracy or safeguarding Britain's national interests. At its core, it's about loyalty not to the British people, but to the transatlantic establishment and the powerful war lobby that dictates so much of Western foreign policy. This is not the conduct of a statesman acting in the nation's best interest. It is the behaviour of a follower, a leader desperate to remain in the good graces of Brussels and Washington, even at the expense of Britain's strategic autonomy. The logic behind his position collapses the moment you analyse it through a British lens. But viewed through the lens of those who profit from perpetual conflict, it suddenly makes perfect sense. Even Hungary has warned that Europe's ruling elites are not working toward peace. They are entrenching war to serve their own political and economic agendas. And yet, while the United States is quietly scaling back its direct military engagement in Ukraine, Starmer is calling for escalation. While Donald Trump pledges to broker peace within 100 days if re-elected, Starmer doubles down on the language of confrontation. All of this comes as Britain's own armed forces face a historic recruitment collapse, shrinking budgets, and crippling shortages. Despite this, Starmer continues to divert limited resources into a foreign conflict with no defined objective and no exit strategy. Every decision he makes in this crisis appears to benefit the war lobby, not the British taxpayer, not the soldier on the ground, and certainly not the families struggling at home. And that's precisely why Starmer fears Farage, because Farage has both the platform and the conviction to expose the illusion. When confronted, Starmer couldn't answer directly. Instead, he resorted to the oldest political trick in the book: smear, distract, and discredit, a clear sign of a leader who has run out of arguments. But Starmer's embarrassment didn't end there. Before Farage even needed to fire back, Katie Hopkins stepped in, delivering one of the most scathing political takedowns of the year. Her words didn't just target Starmer's hypocrisy, they dismantled the entire narrative underpinning the West's handling of the Ukraine war and the cynical political machinery that sustains it.
Three things that we can expect to happen next with the war in Ukraine. Firstly, is that Trump will have brought about peace. After 3 years and, $200 billion of aid being sent by every country and impotent leaders doing nothing but perpetuating the problem, Trump, in his first 100 days in office, will have ended the war, which was his campaign pledge, and he will have honoured that pledge. But the interesting thing, of course, is that success has many fathers. So what you're going to see is Keir Starmer and Macron and a number of other weaklings from Europe trying to claim that they helped bring about peace.